You know that feeling, right? You set this big, ambitious goal, you're all fired up, and then, a few weeks later, it just kind of fizzles out. It is so frustrating. So what's the deal? Well, today we're taking a deep dive into the world's most famous goal-setting tool, the SMART framework. We're going to break down what it is, where it completely falls flat, and a really powerful alternative you should probably be using instead. So here's the game plan. First, we'll get to the root of why most goals are doomed from the start. Then, of course, we'll unpack the classic SMART framework. But we're not stopping there. We're going to explore the common traps people fall into and, this is the important part, the exact situations where SMART goals can actually hold you back. And finally, we'll arm you with a totally different approach, giving you a complete toolkit so you can pick the right tool for any challenge. All right, Section 1. Why do so many of our big plans just die? You know, it almost always boils down to one simple thing. They're just way too vague.
This quote from Bite Size Learning just hits the nail on the head. I mean, can you imagine it? A whole team of amazing players on the field, they've got all the skill, all the talent, but there are no goalposts. What do? They just run around aimlessly. That's exactly what happens in our projects when we have these fuzzy, vague ambitions. Lots of motion, no progress.
So that brings us to the million-dollar question. How do we get from that aimless running around to a real, concrete target? What we need is a system, a framework to give our goals some muscle.
And that, of course, brings us to the most famous framework of them all, SMART goals. It's this brilliant little mnemonic that first popped up in a management paper way back in 1981, and it was designed to do one thing, bring some serious clarity to our objectives.
SMART, as you probably know, stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So let's see how this actually works. We're going to follow a product manager. Let's call her Jane. And Jane's just been handed a super vague but very common goal, increase app usage. Let's see how she makes it smart.
Okay, first up, S is for specific. Increase app usage is way too fuzzy, so Jane gets specific. How are we going to do it? By optimizing the App Store listing and creating social media campaigns. See? Instantly, the what and the how are clear. The team knows what to do.
Next, M for measurable. This one's huge. More usage doesn't mean anything. How much more? So Jane puts a number on it, a target of 1,000 new monthly users. Now, it's not a feeling anymore, it's a number. Success is something you can actually track on a dashboard. Everyone knows exactly what the finish line looks like.
Then we have A for achievable. This is the all-important reality check. A goal needs to stretch you, for sure, but it can't be impossible. Jane looks at her small team and thinks, you know what, 4 social platforms is just asking for burnout. So she smartly scales it back to 3. It's about finding that sweet spot between ambitious and doable. You want to stretch, not snap.
Okay, R is for relevant. This is all about the why. Why does this even matter? Jane connects the dots for her team. This isn't just about getting more users, it's because mobile users are more loyal, which ultimately drives profit for the whole company. Boom. Suddenly, their work isn't just a task, it has real meaning.
And last but not least, T for time-bound. You know, a goal without a deadline is really just a daydream. So Jane sets a clear time frame. Hit that 1,000 user mark within the first quarter. And there you have it, a complete, actionable SMART goal that her team can actually run with.
So that's the textbook version. It seems pretty simple, right? But here's the thing. In the real world, using the SMART framework isn't always so clean. So let's get into the nitty-gritty, the common mistakes people make, and some of the surprising ways this framework has changed over time.
What's so fascinating is that the SMART acronym isn't some sacred text carved in stone. It's actually evolved. Just look at this breakdown. The original 1981 version, it used assignable for A and realistic for R. Over the years, people have swapped in words like agreed or results-based to make it work better for them. This tells you it's meant to be a flexible guide, not a rigid rulebook.
But that same flexibility can also lead to some major mistakes. A classic one is just tracking metrics without having a clear goal attached. Or even worse, forgetting to explain the why to the team. But my personal favorite, and the most dangerous, are zombie goals. You know, these old, outdated objectives that just keep shuffling along, draining everyone's energy because no one has the guts to finally put them out of their misery.
And this brings us to a really important turning point, because for all of its power, the SMART framework has some pretty serious blind spots, especially when you're dealing with the messy, unpredictable world of complex problems.
Wow, This quote from leading sapiens just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? SMART goals assume the world is a nice, neat, predictable line. But what happens when the reality is a messy, ever-changing landscape?
Let's really break that down. Demanding specificity up front can totally paralyze you when you actually need to experiment to find the path forward. Focusing only on what's measurable can make you blind to all kinds of important feedback that doesn't fit in a spreadsheet. And always sticking to what's realistic, well, that's a fantastic way to kill any chance of a real breakthrough. And don't even get me started on a rigid deadline when your main goal is actually to learn and navigate unknown territory. It's just toxic.
So if SMART is the tool for a predictable highway, what on earth do we use when we're off-roading in the wilderness? Well, we need a different kind of tool entirely.
And that's where the PACT framework comes in. It stands for purposeful, actionable, continuous, and trackable. And here it is, the absolute game-changing idea. PACT shifts your focus away from outcomes, which you can't really control, and puts it squarely on the outputs, which you absolutely can. It's about mastering the process, day in and day out, not just wishing for a result. And this slide right here makes the difference so incredibly clear. The SMART goal is the outcome. Get 5,000 subscribers. Good luck with that. It depends on a million things outside your control. But look at the PACT goal. It's the output. Publish one newsletter every week for 25 weeks. That you can do. You have total control over that action. And that simple switch turns a stressful, anxiety-inducing target into a calm, consistent, empowering action you can nail every single week.
So let's be clear. The point here is not to just throw SMART goals in the trash. It's about building a better toolkit and, more importantly, knowing which tool to pull out for which job.
And this right here is the single most important idea to take away. Think of it as explore versus exploit. You use SMART goals when you're on a familiar highway, when the path is clear and you just need to exploit a process you already know. But when you're in the wilderness, facing a new complex problem, well then you need to explore. And that's when a PACT goal, with its focus on consistent, repeatable actions, becomes your absolute best friend. So the next time you sit down to set a goal for yourself or your team, just pause for a second and ask this question. Is this a simple nail that just needs a good, solid, SMART hammer? Or am I trying to build something totally new, something complex and unknown that requires a completely different set of tools? Because choosing the right approach, that's not just some minor detail. It's everything. It's the very first step toward actually getting where you want to go.